It's day 3 and I'm back again, this time with a review of the Kiev-4. The Kiev-4, especially my Kiev-4, is very dear to my heart because it was given to me by my father. The Kiev-4, as the name suggests, was manufactured in Kiev, Ukraine, back in the late 40s up till the late 80s. It was commonly referred to as the poor man's Leica, so you can imagine they were quite popular in the day. My dad had one, obviously, and he passed it on to me. Unfortunately, I fell prey to the myth of the shutter curtain damage thing. I'll tell you more about that later. The lens that comes by default with this camera is the Jupiter 8 lens, which is f2 to f22 lens. Beautiful lens. The aperture, those are the aperture settings, f2 to f22 for the newbies out there. It also comes with this hump here, which is the light meter. Now, it's not through the lens, it is just through its own selenium cell, which has a nice little cover here, which is quite handy, which I keep on as I don't use it. And here it has the area where you can input the ISO or ASA settings of your film and the shutter speed that you intend to use. And in turn, it gives you a measurement of what aperture, or suggestion rather, what aperture to use to have your lens set to. It also has an indication here where a needle that moves around that tells you how far away you are from perfect exposure, depending on your settings. On top here, you can see the film frame advance counter. So it tells you how far along your film, provided you set it to 0 when you start, it tells you how many you have and how many you have left. That's a mechanical process. As you wind the film or advance the film, that counts. Here is the shutter speed and film advance combo mechanism. To advance the film, you simply just wind it up to the next frame until you hear a slight click, and then you're ready to hit the shutter button. To change the shutter speed, you raise the mechanism up slightly and move it to the desired speed right there. Now, word of caution, on the internet anyway, I read that you have to make sure that you've advanced the film to the next frame before you change the shutter button. Otherwise, you damage the mechanism on the shutter. Unfortunately, I think this has happened to me because I didn't know this before I first attempted to use the camera, and I went ahead and changed the shutter speed before advancing the camera. Then tried to take a picture when I then loaded some film in there, and nothing, no more clicks. I took it to an expert, and they said, yes, indeed, that damaged the shutter, so the curtain is damaged and needs to be repaired. Anyway, it's great. So I think the camera looks beautiful. It's gorgeous black leather and sort of aluminium steel, sort of metallic beautifulness, if that's even a word. There are two ways that you can focus this camera. This kind of camera is called a range finder, which is different from an SLR, like say the Zenith E that I reviewed yesterday. What that means is, rather than looking through the actual lens, there is no prism in here, there is no mirror in here that bounces the light from there into a viewfinder. Rather, the viewfinder has its own straight through path of light that you look through. However, it's got two windows in the front where light can go through, and in your viewfinder you can see a little patch which is a mini image of what you're actually seeing. So it's effectively like having two images, and an object is in focus when those two representations of the image align. So as you focus the lens, they either move towards or against each other depending on what you're focusing on, and each object in a different plane or a different field moves at a certain speed depending on how close you are to them. It's a perspective thing. So again, that has its own disadvantages and advantages. Disadvantages, of course, you're not looking directly through the lens, so there's an element of what is called parallax error. So you have a parallax error is basically because you're seeing at a different point of view than the lens. So when you frame something, you might be slightly up and to the left, what you're actually seeing, rather than the lens is seeing something a bit down and to the right. Now, this matters more for objects that are closer than objects that are farther away. And professionals, I've learned usually to compensate for this. And looking through the viewfinder of the Kiev, it doesn't have parallax correction information in there. So you just have to remember that when taking pictures of close objects, that you just have to compensate for the parallax. The advantage of this, though, is there's better focusing in low light, in my experience, and also you can focus, often for me anyway, I can focus sharper and faster with a rangefinder than I can with an SLR. And thirdly, when you look through the viewfinder, you can still have the other eye open and you can basically see what's going on around you, and you can see how a scene is going to change, for instance, which is quite important actually for street photographers that are usually trying to catch a moment. So that's awesome. Anyway, back to the Kiev-4 specifically, and not just rangefinders. To load film into the Kiev-4, this kind of camera is a bottom loader, so the film goes in from the bottom rather than from the back. And it's quite straightforward actually. It's got these two dials here. You just unscrew, boom, and it pops open. Okay, I think I've broken something. Right, that was the spool that just fell out. So there you go, your film goes there. The spool here just fell out because I wasn't being very careful. And then once the film is in, ta-da! Kiev-4. Because I've never used this actual camera, I've never actually used a Kiev-4. I can't tell you what the pros or cons are specifically for Kiev-4, but I can tell you that it's a definite pro would be the lens, because I have used the lens with another camera. And another pro for me would just be the beautiful looks of this thing. Look at how gorgeous that is. That is serious eye candy. That's just beautiful. I think partly because this is actually, rather than the Soviet era camera, it's actually German, since it was basically a legal copy of Contax, which is a German machinery, a German camera. Beautiful. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Tomorrow I'll be back with another camera. Don't forget to subscribe, leave me a message and thumbs me up. Vidtember number 4 coming up tomorrow.